Hello, guys. Buenos días, buenas tardes, or buenas noches. Uh, this video's topic is one that is quite simple and very useful, and it makes use of one of the verbs that we studied in our previous video. Today, we're going to study expresiones con el verbo tener, or in English, expressions with the verb tener. Let's start by remembering what the verb tener looks like, right? I hope you remember that it means to have. So here is the conjugation table for the verb tener. Remember, on the top we have the infinitive. That is the form that just refers to the action in general without anybody doing it, right? And the infinitive in Spanish always ends in AR, ar, ER, er, or IR, ir. In this case, it ends in ER. So tener, that means to have, right? Then on the column on the left, we have the personal pronouns. And on the column of the right, we have the form of the verb that corresponds to each of those pronouns, right? So yo tengo means I have. Tú tienes means you have, you as in a single person, right? Él tiene means he has. Ella tiene means she has. Nosotros tenemos is we have. Ustedes tienen is you guys have. Ellos tienen is they have, right? So this verb is used in many ways, like to have is used in English. For example, yo tengo un bolígrafo. Remember, bolígrafo means pen, so that just means I have a pen, right? Yo tengo una mochila. I have a backpack. Ellos tienen un lápiz. They have a pencil, right? So exactly in the same way that to have in English, tener in Spanish is used mainly for talking about possession of things, right? But in Spanish, tener is also used for quite a few expressions that are very, very useful for everyday communication with people. For example, age. Look at this sentence. Carlos tiene 2 años. Carlos tiene 2 años. Remember what dos means? It's that number right there. It's 2. And años means years, right? So if you were to translate this sentence literally, you would say something like Carlos has 2 years, right? What it actually means is Carlos is 2 years old, right? But in Spanish, you don't use to be, you don't use is in this case for age, you just use has, right? To have. In Spanish, you have years. It's not something you are, it's just something you have. I find that very nice actually, because in English it sounds like you are your age in the sense of, it's an essential part of your being. In Spanish, it's just something that you have, something that you happen to have. So, Carlos tiene 2 años, right? Means Carlos is 2 years old, right? That is the way that you say your age or anybody else's age. For example, yo tengo 40 años. I am 40 years old. Literally, I have 40 years, okay? So, tener is used for age. What else? What's going on with this guy, right? So he seems to be uncomfortable. Something going on with his belly. He's thinking of a sandwich. What do you think's going on? I think he's hungry, right? Well, here in Spanish you also use tener. Marco tiene hambre. Hambre means hunger. So this sentence means literally Marco has hunger, right? What it means is basically that he's hungry, right? But again, in Spanish you use tener here, right? You used to have hunger, right? For saying that someone is hungry. Marco tiene hambre. Marco is hungry. What about this guy? He's really eager to drink his water, right? He's thirsty, right? How would you say this in Spanish? You would say Nicolás tiene sed, again with the verb tener, right? Literally, he has thirst, but what this means is just he's thirsty. Nicolás tiene sed. And what's happening to this poor woman? There's a spider hanging from the ceiling, and she seems to dislike this very much. Adriana tiene miedo. Miedo means fear, right? So in English, you would say she's scared or she's afraid, right? In Spanish, you say she has fear. Adriana tiene miedo. Another expression of the verb tener. How about this young woman here? She seems very uncomfortable with the weather, right? She took off her jacket. She's sweating profusely. She's hot, right? In Spanish, you would use the verb tener again. Carolina tiene calor. That means she's hot. If you translate it literally again, this means she has heat. That's the way you say it in Spanish. Carolina tiene calor. How about this guy? It's the opposite, right? He's shivering despite all the warm clothing he's wearing. He's cold, right? In Spanish, it is Martín tiene frío. Frío is cold. So Martin or Martín has cold. He is cold, right? Martín tiene frío. How about this poor student, right? I hope this is not any of you guys right now, although I know that these videos can be very boring, but what can you do? So she's sleepy, right? In Spanish, you would say that she has sleep. Jenny tiene sueño, right? And a final example, we have a little donkey that happens to know some math. 2 plus 2 equals 4, right? In English, you would say that he is right, right? In Spanish, again, for being right, you use the word tener. Colacho tiene razón. Colacho is just the donkey's name, okay? And tener razón means to be right, right? So in Spanish, you don't say that someone is right, you say that someone has reason, right? Colacho tiene razón means he's right. He's certainly right because 2 plus 2 is 4. These are 8 very useful everyday expressions that use the verb tener, right? So, tener 2 años means to be 2 years old. Tener 40 años means to be 40 years old, and so on and so forth. Tener hambre means to be hungry. Tener sed means to be thirsty. Tener miedo means to be scared. Tener calor means to be hot. To be hot in the sense, of course, of, the weather being hot outside. Tener frío means to be cold. Tener sueño means to be sleepy. And tener razón means to be right or to be correct. Of course, I always use the form tiene in all these examples because I was talking about a single person, male or female, right? So I was always using the él or ella form of tener. But you have to take into account that tener is a verb that you need to conjugate. So for example, how would I say I am hungry? I wouldn't say yo tiene hambre because tiene is the form for él or ella, but I want to use the form for yo. So it would be yo tengo hambre. Okay? How would we say they are sleepy? We wouldn't say ellos tiene sueño, right? Tiene is not the correct form. Go to your table, you'll see that the correct form is tienen. Ellos tienen sueño. They are sleepy, right? So you have to conjugate the verb tener. You have to use the right form that matches the subject in order to use these expressions, okay? Gracias, muchachos. Hasta luego.